Welcome back, Micro Pigs. Tommy Post here with Micro Pig Off-Road Club, a micro four-wheel drive dedicated group. Well, if you guys are subscribed to the channel, which I hope you are, because it costs nothing. There's a button down below, just push it, and it'll tell you every time that a new video comes up, and hit that little notification bell, because that's the one that's going to alert you. But anyhow, if you're watching this, I'd appreciate a like on this video. This is a follow-up. For anybody that's already been a member of the page, or maybe you belong to our group on Facebook, you guys already know that I have a winch in the front, winch in the back. Well, I guess that really doesn't matter in this case because you're only using one at a time. But the bottom line is, I've tried a couple of different combinations with the electrical system on this thing to make sure it can support the usage of the winch. Well, I was out in the swamp recently, and when you start adding things like an electric cooling fan, yes, I still have my factory shroud in place because down here in Florida it's super hot, but inside just happens to sit my electric fan. You get into extra electronics, you're looking at more drainage on your battery. Well, I decided to add a second battery to this thing. That way, when your other stuff is demanding a little bit of current, needs the voltage, you have something else to draw on when you're using that winch. So what I have here is basically a regular battery up front. Yeah, it looks like spaghetti, but that's the best it can be for the time being, and it works. So we got a regular battery up front, and what I did was I went to Walmart and I bought a 20-foot set of jumper cables, 2 gauge. Cut the clamps off the ends. As you can see, it's right down there, coming up to the battery, and it is right here. So you can buy little brass ends or copper ends for it, and you can crimp them yourself. It's just as simple as cutting off the clamps, stripping back the insulation, sliding the little connector on there, and taking a punch and smashing it with a hammer. That will crimp it on there good enough because it fits tight anyway. So basically you're looking at positive to positive in the back, negative to negative. Leave everything else hooked up just as it should be, just as it came from the factory. But you want to run that cable. I'm not going to crawl down in the dirt right now and show you, but mine goes down below and it follows the frame all the way to the back, comes up, and in the back it's the same situation. Cut the clamps off of that end, put a couple of eyelets on it, and you can buy a cheap battery box just like this one. It's about $13. Now in the back here, I've actually got a deep cycle battery. So I've got a regular high cranking amp battery up front, deep cycle battery in the back, and those cables come straight up through one of the grommets in the floor, right inside the battery box. Like I said, positive to positive, negative to negative, because if you switch those polarities, you're going to double the voltage and you'll end up with 24 instead of 12. You don't want that. So really what that means is these alternators, now granted, I've got a low output alternator, which is the factory configuration for this. I believe it puts out about 70 amps under full load. 70 amps, I could go with a bigger alternator, but in this case I didn't do it because how often am I really on the winch? I don't have a high power stereo system with a big old amp. I don't have really a lot of extras other than the cooling fan and my winch. So what that means is when I start tugging on this rascal, it's going to be able to pull current from both batteries. Now I know that 2 gauge wire can probably could benefit from having something a little thicker, like maybe a 0 gauge. But if you look at my battery leads that actually come with the winches I use a small winch, which is in essence a big ATV winch. This is a 6,000 pounder. In the back, I've got a 4,500 pounder. So really, the wires that come with those things are not any bigger than a 2 gauge. So, in my mind, using those jumper cables as a wiring source would work just fine, and it has up until now. I've never melted anything, never blown any fuses, never done anything of that nature. So it is a working operational setup. So what I would encourage is, if you are able to, stick a second battery back there. It's only going to help you in the long run, especially even if one of the batteries goes bad. At least you can still pull off of the back battery if you need to start the vehicle. So that's my continuation of my battery setup. Tommy Post here, Micro Pig Off-Road Club. Catch you on the next one.